Right, so the final section in this chapter is on cash generating units. Yes, cash generating, whoops, here we are, cash generating units. So typically, when assessing the impairment of assets, sometimes you can't, just because of the way the asset is put together, it's difficult to sometimes know what exactly you're impairing. So you have an asset that has so many parts to it, and different components that can't quite be separated out. So it could be a unit, if you like, of a restaurant as a whole that's been put together. So when looking at this, sometimes because you can't do that, we have to do it as a whole. So because it's not technically to do it on a single asset, that's not really feasible, because it doesn't really work like that. So we can use this method of this sort of cash. We say, well, altogether we consider this unit, this kitchen, for example, as a cash generating unit. So in this regard, this is our plan to do that, because we can't quite distinguish. So really, the CGU is defined as the smallest identifiable group of assets which generate cash flow independent of those of other assets. So key point is we can sort of isolate it and treat it as one whole group. So our problem here stems from not being able to isolate the different parts. Now the standard recommends the way to deal with this impairment, and we'll see an example, of course, but the impairment calculation is done by, so first of all, we're assuming the thing is one asset, comparing the carrying amount of the whole asset to the recoverable amount. So we first of all calculate what the actual impairment is. As previously, an impairment exists where the carrying amount exceeds the recoverable amount. So nothing new there. Nothing new there. You have a carrying amount that exceeds the recoverable amount, and we need to write that down, don't we, to the carrying amount. So cash generating units. So first of all, if we're given any information about what's specifically impaired, which is typically the case, we deal with that component that we can see that's totally impaired, and then the rest we share. But if you have any assets already there that are already at their recoverable amount, at their lowest amount, so to speak, we don't further take it down. So typically things like trade receivables and these type of assets, we don't do any further inventory, we don't do any further write down. We look at the assets that have some kind of real value for revaluation, that could be revalued again. So IS 36 requires that an impairment loss attributable to CGU should be allocated to writing down in the following order. It literally tells you what order. So first of all, what unfortunately has to go, all of it goes, is goodwill. And then we split that, and the other assets, we split that based on the pro rata, based on the carrying amount of each asset in the CGU. Again, like I said, no individual asset should be written down below its the recoverable amount. So let's look at this example, and hopefully as you do kit questions, you'll see more. So Sebco runs a unit that suffers a massive drop in income due to failure in tech. So we have a problem with the tech. That's going to have to go anyway. So the following were recorded. So the recoverable amount is now 85 million. 85 million. So let's look at currently what the situation is. We're currently recognizing this CGU at this value, which is 20, 25, 35, 85, 105, and then 145. Let me just do that again. 20 plus 5, yes, 25 plus 10, 35 plus 50, 85 plus 30, 5, 115 there, sorry, 115, and then I have 40, and then I have here 155. So that's what you're currently doing this at. That's what's recognized at. And we're saying that it's now only worth 85. So what are we saying here? We're saying, well, first of all, the thing itself that got bad, the tech is worse, is useless, so that's gone. Then of course, like I said here, what goes in order is the goodwill that goes. And like I said, we cannot recognize, it tells us the other net assets include inventory and receivables. It's considered the carrying amount is a reasonable representation of the NRV. So these are already at NRV, so we don't do anything else. We leave them, and that is typically the case. So the question here is that I've got 40, and I've got to bring this down to 45. So, I mean, this has to fall down to 45. So the question here is, how do I break this down? So I basically have 10 and 50 in that ratio. So I guess the impairment, so to speak, here is that, what do I have here? Yeah, again, like I say, this needs to, I can only really recognize 45 million from here. So really, this is 10, 50, 60, 90. So 10 over 90 times 45 is the new value. 50 over 90 times 45 is the new value. And 30 over 90 times 45 is the new value of these assets. And to be fair, this is pretty nice. 1 over 9 times 5 is 5. So the new value here is 5. 5 over 9 times 50 is 25. And 3 over 9 here is 15. So my brands are now 5. My land is 25. My buildings are 15. And these are recognized at 40. And these are both gone. And that's how I recognize my 85. So what's the task? What do you do? What are we arguing here? We're arguing that this is one whole unit. We can't quite uniquely sell this and separate out the assets. They treat it as one unit. You'll be told that it's a CGU because they make money. No one here makes money individually. They all make money together. There's a sort of a synergy that's happening here where all the money is made together. And therefore, we now deal with the asset that is uniquely bringing us issues, get rid of that, and then split the impairment amongst the sort of more able, should I say, assets, and leave the sort of assets that already are at net realizable value alone. Cool, great stuff. And that is the end of the chapter.